Hello and welcome to One Called Mama. I am your host, Sam, and I am so thankful that you decided to join us today. So I have my very dear friend, Lynzley, here today. We used to work together. We've known each other for
a long time.
10 years. Yeah, a long time. I'm so excited for her to share her story and to share Maverick's story today. But before we get started with that, do you want to share just a couple of things about yourself? Just tell us who you are.
Yeah, so I am Lynzley. I am most importantly, I always want to start with mom, but I know I need to start with myself first. I am a woman of God. I'm Christian, and Maverick has definitely brought me closer to God in every step of his life. I'm also a wife, 5 years this year, and it's been a journey. And we are taking this journey one step at a time. Marriage is not easy, but having a child is not easy either, bringing them in and then trying to make sure that you have God centered day in and day out through whatever task or trials or anything easy that you have going on. You want to make sure that you have God centered. So that's who I am, and my free time, I actually enjoy time to myself. I've picked up reading since Maverick's been born. I also love having time to myself, whether it's yoga or just working out. My husband built me a gym when I was pregnant,
It's
because he
amazing.
said when I was yeah when he said that when I was on maternity leave, he wanted me to have a way to escape whenever he came home. So it was just his way of kind of saying, here you go, here's your time. So I'm very thankful for that. So just a little bit about me.
Yeah. We could do a whole episode on what you were talking on marriage and
Oh my
kids, like how
God.
it changes you and how that's a journey. My goodness, that's a whole episode all in and of itself.
God, I think it can be a whole chapter, a whole season that
Oh
you
my
could
gosh,
do
yes,
of
easily,
women.
easily.
Yeah.
So tell us about Maverick and you use a big word when you describe what his condition is. I can never remember it.
Yeah.
So use the big word and
Yeah.
then tell us
Okay.
tell us about him because he's such a sweet guy.
Yeah. So his diagnosis is pontocerebellar hyperplasia. Basically, he does not have a cerebellum, which
Okay.
is a key in motor skills development. He also has what is it? Oh, hip dysplasia. Basically, it's frog legs. So when you look at the lab results, it says frog legs, and it kind of throws me sometimes because it's a funny thing to put on a medical
Yeah, it is.
diagnosis, but I guess it's just kind of trying to find some sense of humor in it. But so anyways, he has hip dysplasia. He has really tight muscles and joints. And so when he was first diagnosed at 6 months, he was put on some really strong medication. And so for about um it was almost a year that he was on that medication. We're seeing his neurologist for a follow-up. And we were telling her that we didn't really like the longevity that this medication was going to have for him. And so she actually recommended CBD oil. And
Oh,
it
wow.
has been like the holy grail. And we were kind of shocked. And she said, this is natural. It's made here in Texas and it's all original. So insurance doesn't cover that because it's still experimental. So we ordered that on a monthly, and we actually did not see this kid smile until he started taking CBD. He was
Oh,
on the harsh medication for almost a year, never once smiled, really didn't make much um, any motions or have like any verbal cues. But once he got on CBD, it was like the holy grail for him. You could just feel his whole mood change. He had more of a personality come out, which is great because this kid is full of characteristics and personalities now. I mean, it's just so great to even see his attitude come out at 3 years old. I love every minute of it. Um, So he's also been engaged with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech. He gets weekly chiropractic adjustments. I'm sure that's quite nice. Um,
Yeah, he's
I
loving it.
mean, I'm 35. I'm not on CBD, nor do I get adjustments weekly. So to be three and get all of that, that's great.
He's doing
Um,
great, man.
he's doing great. So, but he also started school, like early childhood education recently, which
Mhm.
has pretty much catapulted him into just, he sees what other kids are doing and he cannot wait to do it. He's
No.
talking more, he's moving more, he's almost like when you're holding him, he is thrusting himself out of your hands because he's like, okay, if I could get out of your hands, I would go and move.
Yep.
Like he wants to. And so it's just one step at a time, trying to get him that way. But I mean, what I always tell parents is every child is so, so different. So
Mhm.
I remember in the early days expressing concerns to the doctor and being on maternity leave and saying, something's wrong. Something's not adding up. I'm
Mhm.
a brand new mom, but my kids should not be screaming every time after I feed them. Like something isn't right. And I would video Maverick just screaming and just face turning red. And nurses would say, oh, he's constipated. He's not constipated. No, he's not. Like, you're not listening.
Yeah.
And so I always say too, as hard as Maverick's diagnosis was, it was like peace in not what it, peace in trying to figure out finally what was going on.
Right.
Because for months I was like, there's something wrong. And like our parents were saying something's wrong, like his muscles shouldn't be this tight. He shouldn't be this tight. He shouldn't be quenching up like with everything he does. And he
Right.
just would not let loose. Like he was like a little like chimpanzee holding his legs up to his chest and like just a little ball. And
Yeah.
that's not how you should be. And it was just so hard. Like something's wrong. Like something's and so whenever your child is just put in this generalized category, even as new parents, it's so frustrating because
Yeah.
no person is the same. No child is the same. And when you hear that, you're like, no, like stop just because you feel like you're being shooed away
Yeah.
rather than, okay, let's get to the core of the issue. So it took a long time. And so Maverick came down with he actually got a hernia that was on his scrotum.
Oh
And we went to
no.
the ER here locally and they, couldn't do anything. They said it wasn't bad. And so it just got worse. And when your kid is uncomfortable and he wasn't even a year old at that point, and it just grew. And so we ended up taking him to Cook's ER. But while we were there, he was also sick and he got diagnosed with bronchiolitis and coronavirus. So they ended up keeping him 8 days, but within that 8 days, they saw that we were coming for all these appointments. We had an MRI schedule, we had all these things scheduled to figure out
Mhm.
his diagnosis, what was really going on with him.
Right.
And so they saw us really while we were there, which was a godsend.
Yeah.
And so that's when we found out his diagnosis. So I always say, like, as hard as his diagnosis was to find out, I thank God that we found out how we did because it would have been prolonged, prolonged, prolonged.
Yeah.
And so we ended up having that hernia surgery, I think in May or June of 2022. Don't quote me because we've had a lot of surgery. We've had a few surgeries.
Yeah.
And I remember here locally in town, they did not call us for a urology appointment to see him until a month after he actually had his surgery. So they were just not moving quickly for us.
Yeah.
And I always tell parents if you want your child to be seen, and I don't want to say cared for because I know, like, here locally, I know they do the best they can with what they have, but take your child to an actual children's hospital.
Yes.
There's so much care there. And I have so much good to say about Cooks. I mean, it's gotten to the point where we have stayed quite a few times in the same area that we've made friends with nursing staff. And so it's almost this welcoming feeling when you come back and they greet you with hugs and you just build a family while you're there, which you should if you're going to be there for a while. But I mean, it's just they love your child, not as much as you do, because no one can love your child as much as you, but they love your child. They take time, they listen to you, they find answers to your questions rather than slapping a band-aid on it and putting them in this corner.
Yeah.
So that's just been the journey part of it all.
So, you know, everything that you're doing for Maverick and what you shared is only the tip of the iceberg of what y'all have done for him and his care.
Yeah.
What was the thing? Because you talked about getting like just a general diagnosis, and what was the outlook for Maverick in the beginning? Like, what did the doctor say that his outlook was?
Yeah. She pretty much put up this boundary and said, don't expect much from him. Don't expect him to walk. Don't expect him to develop. Don't expect him to be independent. And I broke down, and it just angers me to this day because so many emotions going through my mind, and I will never forget because I'm thinking we're brand new parents. We have been in this hospital for days already. We have this, he was 6 months old at the time, and it's 2022. Okay. So you're telling me in 2022, there is absolutely nothing to make my child or to help my child develop. Are you kidding me? There is new technology happening all the time. And I was just in shock at how she could tell us that. But I knew in hindsight, like she was doing maybe what she knew. She was telling us what she knew. She was telling us how she had seen other kids with similar diagnoses and how they were turning out in her years of work. Okay. I had done, and I even told her this, I said, I did everything right. And I say that with air quotes. I did everything right in my pregnancy. I ate well. I worked out. I got the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, when we were told that if you did not get this, you would die. Your child would die. And I remember thinking, I did this to my kid. I did this to my kid. And I was so mad. I'm like, this vaccine that we were told did this to my kid. Like, this something that, like, mad on so many levels. Like, all these things I was supposed to do right, I potentially harmed my child, and I could not get past that. And so we got in the elevator, and me and Bryan just like held each other all the way down. We went to the parking lot because my parents couldn't come up and see Maverick, and they're so excited to see us. And my mom just looks at me, and she's like, what's wrong? And I just broke down. And my bonus dad, my stepdad, Larry, he just grabbed me, and he and I have gotten closer with Maverick here. And so my Bryan, my husband, he just said, this is what we found out. And as I'm crying, my mom is like, no, absolutely not. There is nothing wrong with that kid. And I'm just still crying. I'm like, this is reality. Like, this is happening to my child. And she's like, no, we will not accept that there's anything wrong. That kid is perfect. And I'm just like, okay. And I felt like this sensation of just like empowerment. And I felt like, and I will always say this, I felt like Maverick needed me, but I could not be there in that moment for him the way he needed me. I needed my mom to like be there for me, to lift me up and be like, it's okay. I needed her. I needed my mom. And I thank God she was there. Like they were there at that moment. They could have been there any other day, but they were there at that moment. And it was a godsend too. Like it
Yeah.
just, I see God work so much. And it's just amazing to me how he does. We picked ourselves up as a couple. As soon as we get back to the room, Bryan is researching what can we do.
Yeah.
And when we get home, it's like, what can we do? This child will succeed. Like there's nothing in this child's way. And so, we're on this harmful medicine. We're in therapy. We got off this harmful medicine and went into CBD. And we have follow-up appointments with neurologists. And last year and this year, his neurologist, the same one that gave us the diagnosis, has said he is doing fantastic. Rather than quarterly follow-ups and then 6 months follow-ups, I only want to see him once a year because he is doing fantastic.
Wow.
Y'all, he is doing fantastic because of y'all.
Right.
And I said, no, he is doing fantastic because he has the determination. He has the motivation. We are giving him the tools.
Right.
But we also could not do this without the amount of prayers we get, prayers and support. And we do these fundraisers for Maverick to be able to go and do some of the therapy that we do for him. But it's all him. He wants it. And I thank God for that. And I just think that it has a lot to do with kind of like how me and Bryan are. Like, we can't sit still. He has grandparents that can't sit still. So he's like, and he's trying to keep up with cousins. And so he's like, well, I want to do what they're doing and I got to be able to just move. And so I think there's so much to it. I know it's a God thing, but I know it's everyone that's around him that he's feeling the prayers, that he's feeling just like the motivation, that he's going to school and seeing all this happening. And he has the therapists that love him and care for him. And the amount of joy, I remember before I had Maverick, I was struggling with depression. I remember praying for happiness.
Mm.
When I had Maverick, I remember thinking, God, I've been praying for happiness for so long. My kid is joy.
Yeah.
That is what I've longed for. That is what I wanted. This kid is pure joy. Like I can be having the worst day and I can see Maverick and he just changes my mood.
Oh.
I mean, just the best smile I've ever seen. And this kid has been through a lot, but you would never know it.
Okay, so when I hear about all of these different things that y'all are doing for Maverick and like what medicine said his limitations were and what you're seeing him do, you're seeing these other methods really prove to be improving his quality of life. It's giving him these abilities that he didn't know he'd have, or maybe he wouldn't experience if y'all hadn't really been fighting and pushing and really just kind of saying that no is not an option, that saying that he has, okay, fine, he has a diagnosis, okay, but that doesn't dictate what he is and isn't able to do. So the word that comes up in my head when I think of y'all and I think of Maverick is advocacy. And how parents are really, one of our main roles as parents is being advocates and fighting for our kids because they don't have a voice, and not allowing what the world says dictate their lives and what we know God can do. Because I've seen so many miracles, just miracles in my own life and family's life, and hearing stories from other people. And I know that you have seen your own in Maverick's life. I mean, I know you've seen God. Are there particular moments that stand out to you about like how you've seen God move with Maverick in y'all's lives with him. I mean, I know you could pick probably a dozen, but if you could pick like one specific time where you really felt like, wow, that was God, like,
Yeah.
could you share that?
I mean, when we talk about this, I always just think of like the scripture, and I go back to even before Maverick was here, and just how fearful I was to have a child because of all of being pregnant, having a child. If they had a disability or a diagnosis, what would that look like? Um, and Brian always told me, like, when you're ready to have a child, you let me know because I'm ready.
Mm.
And it took me such a long time to get there because I had so much fear. And we were still in the brink of COVID. So there's that fear too. And so, and I remember being in church on Christmas Eve of 2020 and praying about wanting a child and just expressing all my fears to God. And all of a sudden, and this has happened several times in my life when I've gone through other difficult situations, but this was the most recent. I saw fear not just flash before me. And after Mass, I said, okay, Brian, I'm ready. I said, God told me to fear not. And I was like, okay, everything's going to be perfect. Going to have a perfect pregnancy, labor and delivery. God told me fear not. Like, it's going to be golden. Like, parenthood's going to be great. I have nothing to fear. God told me so. Well, when we had Maverick and got Maverick's diagnosis, I remember thinking, like, we had the genetics testing done. I had sonograms done. Why wasn't this caught? Why wasn't Maverick's diagnosis caught? Why could we not learn about this sooner? Why? And when I look back, I think that was God. God was protecting me from not knowing that something was wrong with my child because he knew how stressed out I would be.
Yep.
Rather, he had me focus on my pregnancy, and I had a great pregnancy. How excited I was to be pregnant. He did not want me to focus on anything else. Rather, I was the one that was always like planning, planning, planning. I'm a planning ahead type of person.
Mm-hmm.
So this really threw me for a loop. Like, God, I wanted to prepare. And he was like, no, you're going to learn to trust in me. I told you not to fear. And here we are. And so I really think it was God saving me from stress.
Mm.
And so when we get to Maverick's diagnosis, fear not. Okay, God, you told me not to fear. I am concerned. I am worried. I am scared. And I just remember putting it at the foot of the cross and being like, okay, God, you've got us. You've got us. Okay. Going back to work, Maverick has all these doctor's appointments. He's getting sick. I'm getting sick. Like 2022 of going back to work was just rough.
Yeah.
I almost lose my job. And they were like, if you miss another day, like this is business, it's not personal, like you're gonna lose your job, Lynzley. And I remember being so angry because I'm like, God, I'm doing everything right. Like what happened? So again, I put this at the foot of the cross and I think, you know what? As angry as I am with them telling me this, they cannot fire somebody for being a good employee or having a good attitude. So that's what I did every single day. I've focused on being a parent as I could, not to ever say I cut off parenthood, but I focused on work at work and just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
just really shut off my emotions of what was going on personally and did that. And that was very hard. But I thought, I've got a job, I have to keep this job, so we're going to do that. And then, I mean, from like his, we have issues with insurance companies sometimes, not wanting to pick up the fees for like last year it was his standing frame. going back and forth and being like, God, why aren't they covering this? Like, it's $6,000 for the standing frame. Oh, it's coded wrong. Thank God. God, thank you. That was you again. Thank you. I mean, when we made Maverick's diagnosis known, um, we put it out there, and I never want to make him vulnerable or exploit him to people, but I thought it was important for him to have those prayers. We both did as a couple. And we launched a GoFundMe so that we could continue to get the therapy that we needed for Maverick. That was God. God spoke to those people, helped us raise that money so that he can continue to develop and grow. We had another fundraiser this year for a different therapy. Again, he showed up. I mean, childcare hasn't been easy trying to find. We had one girl say that she could only do every other week. And we have had nursing not be nursing can't come out, nurses aren't covered by insurance to watch Maverick. There's always something, always. And so throughout this journey, I've learned to say, okay, God, you said don't fear. So every time something challenging comes up, whether it's Maverick or work related or between me and Bryan, like, I'm like, God, you said fear not. And it's not just supposed to be about Maverick. It's supposed to be about all of us. Like, we're supposed to trust in him.
Right.
And I remember coming into being a mom and saying, okay, I just want to be a better Christian, a better wife, a better mom every single day. This Maverick's diagnosis has brought me so close to God, so close. And I often think like, I understand that God has our lives set in stone before we're here and has it mapped out. So he knew this for us. But I don't know what to say about praying to be closer to God, but this is how I got closer to God. Rather than I don't think I've ever questioned. I know I've questioned like, why my child? I know I've questioned that, but I've never lived in that space. Because if I live in that space, it's not going to do me any good.
No.
I'm going to get upset. I'm going to get mad. I'm going to get depressed. I do have my moments where, that we have nieces that are both older and younger than him. And he has a cousin that's younger than him, and they're walking and talking and moving. And I'm just like, it is hard for me. It's hard to see them grow and develop. And I get snaps from my sister-in-law sometimes of her girls, and I'm like, I can't open that right now. Like, I do have my hard moments where I'm like, I can't. But that's me protecting myself mentally. But as soon as I look at Maverick, I'm like, you will do that. Me and Bryan, and like, his dad has also shared with me, like, we have dreams of Maverick talking and walking and jumping, and like, we have these dreams. Like, I don't care what people want to call them. I think that's God speaking to us. Like, hey, he's going to get there. We believe it. We fully believe it because we have a child too that's motivated. I mean, I see God work every single day. And I remember when I came back to work, hold on one second. When I came back to work from maternity leave, I have this coworker, her name is Paula, and she had just lost her husband. And I remember whenever we first received Maverick's news of, like, when we went and got his eyes checked, and this was before he even had his diagnosis. And they thought he was blind because he was not reacting to light. And I remember coming into work and just crying. And my two coworkers, Anissa and Paula, they just grabbed me and just started praying for me. Like, just in a circle, the three of us huddled together and just prayed. And honest to God, those two women got me through so much because they knew my emotions every single day because we're family. I mean, I saw them more than anything, but they're two both God-fearing Christian women. And so having them there to recite Bible verses, to talk to say, hey, can I pray with you?
Yep.
They were both angels when I needed. I mean, they're both angels, absolutely. They're God sent, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I have I was in the best place as far as like work environment that I could be. Like I could not imagine being in another work environment.
Right.
Like they were there as I needed them. And they're still there for me today. And they love seeing Maverick's updates and pictures and videos and oh my gosh, look how much he's developed and grown. And I have people that have been following his journey that'll come up to me and say, wow, I saw Maverick. Or people will see us in the streets and or see Maverick and say, hey Maverick, you're so cute. Like they know Maverick, but they don't know us. But that's
Right.
great. Like they
Yeah.
recognize our kid and they'll tell us, hey, I'm praying for you or I'm praying for Maverick. And I'm like, it's humbling
It's
for complete
amazing.
strangers to pray for us. And I remember the first time we saw our priest about Maverick and asked him to pray over Maverick, he made it very clear to us, very clear. He said, God did not give you a child with a diagnosis to punish you. He gave you a child with this diagnosis to make you humble.
Mm.
Humble it did, because I feel like I'm much more level headed. I still have my emotions. I can still be a bit dramatic, but I feel like I'm more humble than what I probably could be about some things. And I'm so thankful for that because it allows me to process things in a more clear state.
Yeah. What I hear and what is so hard, I've wrestled with this thought process because I know people go through extremely difficult things.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought of choosing joy, that you
Mm-hmm.
choose, I'm okay with saying I choose how I respond, but
Right.
choosing how I feel is a lot harder. And what I hear is that y'all have done both. And what
Mm-hmm.
is so inspiring and so encouraging is that you can either look at your situation, and I'm not saying like specifically yours, I'm saying in general,
Yeah.
as a human being, you can look at what you're
Mm-hmm.
given in life and you can do two things. You can despair and complain
Mm-hmm.
and see the bad, or you can give thanks and be joyful and know
Mm-hmm.
that there is a greater plan.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that decision, that's going to dictate how you live your life. And it's an everyday decision. It is not a once and done. It is not a
Oh.
I'm good. I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose hope. I'm going to choose life and it's done and like you just live your life. No, it is, and I know you can attest to this. It is an everyday. I have to give this back to God. Every day I have to choose to have faith. Every day I have to trust that there is a greater plan and a greater purpose, and that I am where I need to be right now, and that God has given me this child for this exact time. And his life has purpose and value and meaning beyond what I can even see or understand or wrap my head around. Because you know, and I know you know, that Maverick's life has changed and impacted other people. I mean, you said your bonus dad. I mean, it's night and day. Who
Yeah.
he was before and who he is now, and how much that he loves that little boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, life, how you get through life is a choice. And I am not denying that some people are dealt really, really rough, hard things. Um, And yet God, God is
Yeah.
always there. He's always got a plan. There's always something more to than what we can see.
Yeah. You can choose to stay better or get better. And I always want Maverick to always focus on the better. So,
Absolutely.
and I when and I know I've talked to you about this before. When I say Maverick is a blessing and other people say their children are blessings, I want people to understand, like, no, I know my child is a blessing. I have seen and heard how much joy my child brings to my stepdad, to a cousin of Brian's, to other people. He was used as a, what do you call it? I told you that story of that lady that asked for him in church.
Yes. Yeah.
A
Oh,
vessel. He was used as like a vessel for her.
yeah.
She did not know us from Adam, but she knew of Maverick,
Mm,
and she wanted Maverick whenever we were in healing mass. She was on the floor and she could not get up, and she was asking for Maverick. The fact that my child was being called for to help somebody get up, or because she felt like he served her a purpose in that moment,
right.
that's huge. That is godly. I don't care what anyone says. Like, God was working in that moment, and He's always working.
Right.
He's a blessing.
Yeah. And it's so it's and I was talking about this with a friend, and it's going to sound kind of funny, but the things that God shows us, like that when we hear the Holy Spirit and when we have those like extremely intense spiritual moments, and if you've had them, you know what I'm talking about. um
Mm.
they're so hard to convey. Like you can't in words convey that experience or what you feel like God is showing you, all you know, because it's like so intimate and it's so on another level that there are no words for it. There's no way you can express to someone what you've seen God do and how
Mm-mm.
impactful it was. It's just kind of like you just kind of have to take my word for it, and you
Yeah.
kind of have to see it,
Yeah.
experience it for
Yeah.
yourself. um Man, I would love, as we kind of wrap up today, I would love for you to share, um, if you could talk to one mama or one couple right now, and you could give them a word of encouragement, or you could speak life to someone right now that was really struggling maybe with something similar, or just that fear, that you said that you were really struggling with, what would you say to them?
So your child's diagnosis is not the end. It does not define your child. It marks the beginning of a new journey for them, one that requires you and your family to adapt and pivot. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. I want them to understand that you don't have to live in fear. I want them to understand that you have to make God centered in all of this. Otherwise, it's going to be a struggle. I never want Maverick to look at me and say, "What's wrong with me?" There's nothing wrong with you. And I don't want anyone to say, "When will he be normal?"
Mm,
Because I've had people ask me that, and it hurts. Because what is normal?
yeah.
Words hurt. And I want parents to understand that as you want to take words with a grain of salt, they're sharp, because we could have taken in what the doctor have given us, and we could have sat with it and stewed with it and done nothing with it. But instead, we said, "Okay, we see you. We hear your words. They're sharp, but that's all. All you're doing is opening up a different avenue for our child. It's
Mm,
not the end." You can use your child is going to have a harder journey, but that's okay. Trusting in God along the way is going to get you through it. There's going to be moments where you break down and say why, and that's okay. Your emotions are valid. You're allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to be angry and upset,
Mhm.
but do not live there. Do not,
Yeah.
because that'll be the devil taking over, and he wants that. There's so many times that Brian and I could have just like succumbed to just anger. There's times where our relationship has been tested in this, and a lot of parents don't make it because they have a child with a diagnosis and because it's hard. But in these moments, like I feel like, yeah, we've bickered, but we've also said, like, what can we do to become better? We are going to healing mass, but we're also going to confession beforehand and we're fasting beforehand. And that's been huge.
Yeah.
So don't take no for an answer, as what I can say. What's out there for your child? And it's not easy. Answers aren't easy to find.
Yeah.
The research is worth it. Get talking. Don't feel like you're exploiting your child just because you make it known. Maybe there's people that have children that have the same diagnosis as your child, and they don't know which way to go with it. Maverick and Bryan are coming home right now. They don't know which way to go with it. And so they're like, hey, your child's experiences, my child, oh, this is what we did for my child. So get that conversation going, saying, hey, what can we do? What did y'all do? Oh, these are the results that y'all have seen. Great. We should try that.
Right.
Don't feel like you're exploiting them.
Yeah.
You may not want to share everything, but it's okay to make it known. It's okay to talk about the things that are going on.
And that's
It's healthy.
it's so important because we were never meant, even in, the best case scenario, we were never meant to parent alone because
No.
you need help. No one expects parents to do it by themselves. Always throughout history, it is, oh, and I'm going to harp on this probably in a lot of episodes, but I probably already have, but like it is totally normal and okay to need and require and ask for help. You're not failing as a parent when you reach out for
Yeah.
help. You
Right.
are doing what is perfectly normal and natural and needed, because parenting is it was not created for two people to do by themselves without any outside help. Like you have to have people helping you.
Yeah. It's exhausting. I
It's
honestly
exhausting.
don't know how people have more than one child, because it's exhausting having one child. But it's like it's not just a child. You have a house, you have bills, you have work, like
Mhm.
you have a life outside of being a parent too. But it's exhausting, and it's okay. It's okay. I want parents to also understand it is okay to take time to yourself.
Mhm.
Time
It's
to
needed.
yourself is selfless. It is not selfish. I don't care if it's 5 minutes. I don't care if it's an hour. You have to take care of yourself, because you cannot be 100% present for your child if you are not taking care of you. If
Yeah.
you are not mentally well,
Mhm.
you have to be able to get that in, whether it's yoga or painting your fingernails or going on a walk. You have to find something.
Yep. Absolutely. That's so important. I totally 100% agree with that. You have to get away. You have
Yeah.
to. And it's okay. Like you shouldn't
Yeah.
feel bad about that. Like
No, you're not a bad parent. You don't
ever.
feel guilty about it. You have to.
Yeah. I heard of I recently, Aaron and I kind of did this anyway, but they put a name to it, which I thought was cool. It was called the tap out method. And
Mm-hmm.
really, it was talking about like when emotions are running really high and you're getting really frustrated because your kids are pushing every single button you have. And you just, as that partner, you see them reaching their limit and you go over and
Mm-hmm.
you have some sort of cue, right? That's understood, and you just touch them on the shoulder or you tap them on the
Mm-hmm.
waist, and they know that that means, hey, I see you're frustrated. I see you can't see the peace and calm. You
Yeah.
can't keep it, right? Like you're at your limit. Step out, like step away. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
mad. Don't be offended. And it's understood. Like you agree
Yeah.
beforehand. If you get tapped out, you don't get mad about it. You go take a break because you're about to have an adult meltdown.
I like that.
And
I like that method.
you need to step away because you can't be peaceful and you can't be calm and level-headed in this moment. And it's really good. And we've actually like adopted the name, and we've done it a couple of times because Aaron has come up to me and be like, you need to tap out. And I'm like, bye. Yes, I need to tap out. Like,
I'm gonna lay down.
I'm so done right now. It's very effective, but like it's similar. It's not exactly the same thing, but I mean, it's very similar. Like you need to tap out as a parent and go do something that isn't related to parenting at all.
Yeah.
And that's key. It's important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. So,
well, thank you
so much.
I really appreciate you being on here today. I appreciate you sharing his story and just your testimony. It's beautiful, and I know that it's going to be really encouraging to other moms out there.
I hope so.
If you have any prayer requests, if you have any episode ideas or anything you would like to share, please feel free to email me at onecalledmama@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I will be seeing you again very soon.